The next step is to lay out the instruments, and again I have that full selection, and cut them all out with a scissor and plot them and lay them out and get them exactly where I want them. Just want to get a little feel for where these instruments go, even though I can't do this, just if any of them are real obvious. When you go to line these up, it's always best if the instruments are a little smaller than they should be. See how you get a little ring around it. What happens if the instrument is too big, it kind of blocks it out. I don't know which looks less realistic. You'd really like to have it perfect, but in this case we have one set that's too big. This is why you need all the sets. You can just fish around and find some that are just about the right size. Now, Mama's home, supper's on. We're going to end it at this point. Ready to put the instruments on their backdrop and try to get another session in tomorrow. Okay, today we want to work on that dashboard some more. Try to get off all the details. Well, when you just walk down here and look at this from far away, it really does have a nice look. Some of the things I have in my little cockpit bag of stuff. These little rhinestones, which make for great little lights. These, of course, for making, remember years ago people just put 50 of these in, and then after a while the knobs would fall off and pretty soon the cockpit looked more like a pin cushion. Don't know if I'm going to be able to use this, but this is cockpit combing, maybe for around the top of the dashboard. It's a good idea. There's another thing, is I have some pictures of it, and of course I have the real planes here, so it makes it even easier. Some of the dashboards and some of the details that were on some of the other models, so you can get a little idea. Some of the lighting, the gun sight, some of the switches. So we got a lot of little things to work on, and it's good that this gets spread out over a couple of days, because the next thing I want to do is I want to lay out the instruments. I was in the middle of doing this the other day when a phone started ringing, and now it's just a question of I'll get out the books. One of the things I like to do, make sure the instruments are not upside down or on an angle or whatever. And if possible, if I can get some of them to actually be where the real instruments are. Keep in mind, it's not a scale model, so the shape of the fuselage is different. It's just not possible to make a totally scaled dashboard. But to get the look we're after, I think we'll get pretty close. Now, a good way to get these in position, just hold them with the tip of a new XL blade. And I mean the smallest drop of, in this case, Brodax CA, the slightest drop will hold these right in position. Whoops, what I like to do is get the extra off so I don't have a big glob there. And of course, if it's wrong, I can just go over it with another instrument. Now, one of the ways, if you miss it, you can take a black pen and go around it. We're pretty much just going to go by and replace these instruments one by one now. One of the little improvements I found is the CA was kind of bleeding through on the instruments and making them a little fuzzy. So what I did, I took some carpenter's glue, obviously Elmer's glue, some kids' glue, even probably rubber cement would be okay. And that worked a lot better. It also gives you a split second to adjust the instruments. So a little improvement as we're going along here in instrument fill. Anyway, from this point on, this starts to really pick up speed. Okay, so now the next step is I have a sheet of this thin, like canopy material to represent the glass. And what I want to try to do now, I want to mix up some 5-minute epoxy and just glue this in spots. I don't want to get any glue near the instruments, because if you squeeze it and it comes in together, boy does it make a mess. And then while that's drying, I want to very carefully position this on top. And when I'm all done, then I'll cut it out, of course, but really to get it as accurate as possible, It's what the epoxy gives me a little chance to do, is do this and get it all lined up just perfectly. Now the idea of this whole thing is when it's all done and you walk by the cockpit, you get that little flash of off the glass. That little flash. That's what I like about this. And then when it's dry, while it's drying, we can make up some of the other little detailing. Those old map pins, one of the things that makes it look a lot more realistic, if I get a piece of aluminum tubing here and make this, if you look at a real plane, a lot of them have a throttle that works in and out like this. So you can simulate that with a little piece of the smallest size of aluminum tubing that they make. Now that looks a little bit better, but the final thing is I want to get another little piece of tubing to make the sleeve that would normally be the throttle going in and out. At least on the air coupe, that's how it was. The air coupe Spitfire. And it's just two pieces of telescoping tubing. I'll make a couple of these up for the various little controls. There's also a lever for the retractable gear. I can make that little lever up similar way with a pin and a little piece of aluminum tubing. You can take an ordinary T-pin here, just cut one side off and put a piece of tubing on one side. It makes a very nice simulated lever. Again, this is all good little things I can do while at dashboard the epoxy is drying. By the time that's done, I'll have some of this detailing ready to go. Now you just need to take a parting wheel and put a little notch in a piece of tubing like this, and you got it. It's all set. And yep, another one of the little levers made. And that's where that little lever will reside, but I don't want to permanently epoxy him in there because I'm going to be working up here, so I'll just store him for later. Now I got some of this thin aluminum tubing. I want to see if it's even possible to replicate the bends in this yoke. It's almost like a shovel handle. And you see the problem with this is I can't really bend it that sharp. Maybe I got to make this out of wire. Well, let me practice with this. See, I made this nice big bend, but that's too big in diameter. Enough tubing to keep K&S in business. Not happy. The tubing didn't bend, it kinked. Wasn't real happy with it. But so what I did, I took a bunch of scraps of 64th plywood, and I want to see if it's just possible. I remember when I made the carrier hook for the Seafire. It's just trying to get this shape here. It's a little more round. And we'll see if we can carve this out of a piece of plywood. This way the grain will be going in a lot of different directions. When in doubt, use 64th plywood. Let's see what that looks like. I'm trying to get the feel if I have the right shape here or not. Boy, if you ever want to see something that's delicate here, it's like I'm doing dental work or something. Anyway, even if this one doesn't work out, I have an idea how I can do this now. Laminates of 64th plywood with the grain going all different directions are real good for when you want to do a little tiny part like this. It is very delicate work though. My eyes are so bad I can hardly see this. Can't even hold it, let alone see it. But it's all these little details that ultimately when you're done, you're looking at, wow. Now I'll admit to making 70s, but I probably made 12. Anyway, what I have to do now is get a little dowel of sandpaper and hand finish this round. This is on a yoke where this in a real plane swivels back and forth, so I have to somehow simulate that joint either with paint or ink. Now it's probably that's the final one. I'm almost done for the night after carving this. Now see how this yoke, well, obviously it rotates here on a Anyway, I'm going to hand finish it. This is about all I'm going to have time for today. This took a long time to do. This took a lot longer.